reading from the Science of Mind magazine, the Daily Guides. I was trying to find a suitable quote, but it's kind of escaping me right now. Thought for the day. Better be alone than in bad company. Thomas Fuller. Better be alone than in bad company. Thomas Fuller. How about that? Reverend Raymont has called this possibility percentages. I'm going to change it up a little bit. First quote is from somebody who was a really good author, good science fiction writer, and somebody whom I read a lot of when I was a kid. His name is Arthur C. Clarke. I didn't know he'd been knighted, actually. He was Sir Arthur C. Clarke. How about that? A brilliant science fiction writer who was also a keen snorkeler. I remember a scuba diver. And I do believe that, although he was born in England, I think he actually lived lots of parts of his life in Sri Lanka. So anyway. But what does he say? He says, when a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. How about that? He is very probably wrong. And excuse me, for some reason, my nose is running a bit. And Ernest Holmes in Seminar Lectures says, so we have to keep our minds open at the top for a new influx of wisdom. So we have to keep our minds open at the top for a new influx of wisdom. Ernest Holmes was always big about that. Although he put the material for the Science of Mind together and founded religious science community, he always said, people will come along later who know more than we do. We need to keep our teaching open at the top. We need to allow in new ideas as they come along. And then Reverend Raymont says, have you ever grabbed an umbrella because the forecast predicted rain, only to find it sunny and clear? Then you see others without umbrellas, and suddenly the sky darkens, clouds gather, and rain begins to fall. At that moment, as you open your umbrella, you feel grateful for trusting your intuition. And you're dry, right? Do you regularly check your weather forecast? If you're planning to travel, do you check the forecast for your destination? Doing so helps us plan our activities, including how to dress appropriately. He says, how often do we see a forecast that says a 99% chance of rain and decide not to take an umbrella because we think it probably won't rain? Yes, and then he says, of course, and yet when it comes to being 100% divine, that's exactly what we do. We downplay, underestimate, and diminish ourselves, our abilities, and our potential. Essentially, we do the same thing I was taught as a fundamentalist Christian. Remind yourself often that you are a lowly sinner, your flesh, mind, and soul are corruptible and weak. He says, talk about an affirmation. And then he says, and he's referring to himself and others, he says, although we're part of the New Thought movement, and I would say, and others interested in having open minds, many of us still hold on to the non-life affirming ideas and beliefs that we were taught. He says, don't let age, the internet, a doctor, loved ones, or politicians convince you that your divinity is less than 100% of what there is. He says, today, remind yourself of Ernest Holmes' words. There is only one life, and that life is God. Its infinite possibilities, power, creativity, and wisdom. And that life is your life right now. And of course, there's always a disclaimer. Here is the disclaimer. Nobody in, no, let me correct that. No one in New Thought should be claiming or trying to convince anybody else that they are God, the all. Well, they ought to be convincing people is this, that if God truly is all there is, then everything, this box, this house, everything is an expression of God. And human beings, as rational beings, are also an expression of God. But human beings are able to understand and appreciate the fact that they are an expression of God. And that's what he's saying here. Do other animals? We don't know. We claim human beings are the only ones. No, we don't know. We don't know if an octopus, an elephant, some of the more advanced apes and so on, we don't know, honestly, if other beings are appreciative of this and aware. So we seem to think we're the only ones, but then again, we have a lot of hubris as human beings, right? But the point is this, we're all expressions of a divine source. We are all capable of understanding and appreciating that we are, and that when we do, we should realize that we are not something lowly and to be discarded. No, we are worthy human beings who are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that is my story for today. I've done enough teaching and preaching today, actually. So, yeah, literally. So, anyway. The affirmation, God is all there is. It is what I am. All that I am is what is. 100% divine, inside, outside, and all around. I am divine. So take your pick of those. Look out for my colleague, Reverend Lisa, tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. Look out for me, hopefully somewhere around about 5 p.m. tomorrow, when the day will not have been as crowded. And God willing, and a fair wind. Let me see, what was I going to say? I'm just knowing this for each and every person watching this. I'm knowing each and every one understands, believes, and comes to appreciate the fact that they're expressions of the divine. And this is my prayer that I release with gratitude into a divine law that always says yes. And so it is. And until next time, my friends, namaste.